I'm so excited to have her on my show, the Zing Revenue Show, because she's my first female guest, and she has chock a block full of information and experience, and I'm really excited because Bron has some really wonderful nuggets to share with us, and she's got an amazing background. Bron, maybe you'd like to just give us a quick elevator pitch about yourself.
Okay, I'm going to make this is my normal way of introducing myself. I'm
Sure.
in my third act. The grey hair is a bit of a giveaway,
The Silver
and
Warriors.
yes, the Silver Warriors. I like it. I like it. So first act. I left when I left high school. I wanted to become a teacher. Had wanted that from
Wonderful.
the age of 8. So I pursued that
Nice.
path
Mhm.
as fairly typical for my generation. Got married in
Sure.
my early 20s,
Yeah.
was a mum by my late 20s. And
Fantastic.
yeah, finished my teaching career in 2004 as a school principal.
Oh, lovely.
Second act started in a couple of years later when I left my first marriage after 28 years,
Sure.
not really knowing why I was leaving, just knowing I couldn't stay any longer.
Yeah.
And having a strong Christian background, I
Mhm.
joined the Salvation Army and
Nice.
ended up becoming a Salvation Army officer and an
Oh,
ordained
wonderful.
minister.
Oh,
So I
beautiful.
looked after a church,
Yep.
did a degree in theology, went on and did my honours, and
Marvelous.
then for a time worked on Nauru with asylum seekers there.
Mm.
And then my third act began at the ripe old age of
Mhm.
60 when I decided that was the time to start a business, as you do when you turn 60. And I stepped into doing professional speaking because I'd always wanted to have a professional speaking business. I'd been public speaking for like 30 odd years. And that's what I've been doing for the last 9 years. And I'm amazed to say I'm going to be 70 next year. And I am loving life, building a business that now really reflects my whole life journey. But I'm focusing in two main areas. One, the area of unconscious bias, and the other, women in leadership. And am continuing my academic journey because I'm doing a PhD looking at the intersection of bias and shame.
Wonderful. Thanks, Bron. That is incredible. There's so much to unpack here. Um, One of the things that I really enjoy talking to people about when I learn about the fact that they were former principals is I love to hear what they have to share because I think it is such a heavy responsibility, and I think that principals are just so wonderful because they have dealt with so many issues and challenges and wins, so maybe I'd like to
Yeah.
just pick your brain and maybe
Yeah.
encourage you to share just one thing that you learned from your time as a principal.
Oh, gosh. The thing that comes to mind is that I was the principal of a very small Christian school. We had less than 50 students, but my workload as a principal was no less than if I had been the principal of a school of 500.
Sure.
Because, in a school of 500, you've got a vast array of admin staff behind you. So there was this
Yeah.
sense in which I was the jack of all trades as the principal, but I think too, the things that I learned was how to be diplomatic. I've always had that skill, but when you have an angry parent who charges into the foyer 2 minutes before the 9 a.m. bell is going to go, and then wants to complain about the school reader that was sent
Oh
home with their
dear.
child that they
Oh
didn't
my.
approve of. And I was a teaching principal also, so it meant there were times when I would need to be on class. And so trying to balance the needs of my students, the needs of the parents, and then my own safety. So
Yeah.
great amount of
Yeah.
diplomacy needed.
Sure. Wow. That's incredible. We should have you as an ambassador to the United Nations someday. Um,
Oh,
yeah. um,
Interesting times.
yeah, I've got a list of stuff here, so I'm just going to go through it sequentially. Hope you don't mind.
No,
Just now you
great.
said, just now I note that you shared that you worked with the asylum seekers. Um, could you maybe share with us something that you took away from that experience?
Um, I don't use the phrase, even though it's a cliche, but I don't use it lightly. For me, it was life changing. Now, I grew up in the southern suburbs of Sydney. I'm a Sutherland Shire girl. You know, once a Shire girl, always a Shire girl. And
God's country.
yeah, yeah, but isolated. It's on a peninsula. So everybody looked like me, sounded like me, very conservative, largely, Christian base. So when I went to Nauru, even though I was in my 50s, I felt, and, I'd gone through a divorce, moved out of, the family home, all of those things. I thought I'd experienced a lot in life. But when I was confronted with a camp full of, they were all men when I first went to Nauru who had
Right.
skin colours very different to my own, who spoke languages I hadn't even heard of before, like Pashto and Urdu and Dari, who I knew mostly came from Muslim countries. So it couldn't have been any further different to me than my growing up and the life I had lived. And then, Nauru is a Pacific Island nation, so a different culture again. And so I was really challenged about how I looked at the world. And I could see just by the first time ever I've actually really listened to my body because my stomach's churning. I'm feeling really uncomfortable. And I realized that I had a level of fear. I didn't have any reason to be physically afraid. The men were in a camp with a chainmail fence around it. There were security guards everywhere. But I realised the fear was about difference, that somewhere along the line, I had learned that difference was a threat. And when you've come from a background where everybody's like you, of course, anybody who is different really stands out and you don't, there's this sense of suspicion. And so I had absorbed that idea of difference being a threat. And I was also observing the way that the white expats, like there were people from Australia, New Zealand, the UK, and the US working on Nauru in the various teams. And we all, including myself, had this sense of superiority. It was like, well, hello, third world country, university educated. Of course, we know better than people who've only been on this tiny island and don't have more than, say, grade 12 education. And when I sat down with one of the Nauruans who actually headed up the Salvation Army Nauruan, the team for the Nauruans with the Salvos, and said this to her, and she just said back to me, "We know this about you guys, but we just accept it." So she knew and experienced what I was seeing. And so this sense of white privilege, white superiority. So they were the two main things, this sense of a racist, an undertone that I wouldn't have thought I had. I would have said I didn't have a racist bone in my body, but starting to recognise that I'd absorbed this just from growing up the way I did. And then this sense of white superiority. So that made me look at myself differently. And the more I was able to see myself differently, the more then I was able to work with people who were very different to me. And I could turn that difference is a threat to difference is an asset. And that changed so much for me and was really the basis then of the change in the work that I'm doing now. And so when I stepped into speaking, it was with a very different mindset.
Thank you. That is so precious. I think that, because we are living in such a globalized world, um,
Mm.
having to come face to face with our and it's not our fault, it's just that we do grapple with, I believe, ethnocentrism, and
Yes.
I really appreciate you sharing that, because that's encouragement to everyone listening in, that it it we don't need to be ashamed of that. We just have to realize that, oh, okay, it is present, and we need to
Mm.
work on it, and just learn to accept, and just basically develop an interest and curiosity about other people. And I really appreciate you sharing that, because that is wonderful encouragement to our listeners. Yeah, thanks. All right, we've got a whole
Look,
bunch
that's
of,
fine.
sorry. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
No, I was
yeah.
just going to say that was where my interest in the connection between bias and shame started, because I don't think we need to be ashamed of our biases, but we
Yes.
do need to understand
Yeah,
the influence they can have on us.
yeah, yeah. I think it's great because I think the battle is already like partially won with just an awareness, of our
Yes.
implicit biases, and we're gonna talk about that in a short while. um I don't want to let this go, because you also dropped another nugget of gold, which is starting a business much later on in life, than the teenagers and the all these mythical entrepreneurs, who become billionaires at 25. Give us
Mhm.
a little takeaway, about starting a business um, in the silver years.
Well, I think what I've discovered is that whether you're starting them later in life or earlier in life, when I first started, because I have no background in business, so I've, education and not for profit, I thought everybody else had some sort of secret sauce, that there was some magic way of building a business, finding the right clients, in my case, finding the right stages and gigs, places to speak. And what I've just, and I always used to think, I'm just making this up as I go along. Hello, I actually think that's the truth. All entrepreneurs are making it up as they go along, because we start with an idea. We've got a bright idea, and where I've landed and where I started are quite different, though you can join the dots and see how I got from one to the other. And obviously, you can come into business with maybe more experience in business than I did. So I've had to learn a lot of, strategy and marketing and, you know, all sorts of, online stuff that I had never had to confront before. But I literally do think for most of us, we're making it up as we go along. And we need to be proud of that, because we literally are creating something out of nothing. And I was thinking about this as I drove to the office here today, that I'm amazed that in 8 or 9 years, I've gone from having no visibility to having quite good visibility, to being able to be guesting on things like this, where I'm earning regular money. It may not be as much as I would like to, but I'm thinking, I did that. I made that happen. No one did this for me. I didn't sign up for a job or anything like that. And so I think we need to be really celebrating the small wins along the way, and yeah, just pat ourselves on the back, because we are making this up as we go along. We're creating something out of nothing. And whether it's bricks and mortar or, service-based business, we're
Yeah.
bringing products and services to the community, to the marketplace, that are of value to other people.
And I'm glad you shared that, Bron, because I think that there are so many women right now who are younger than you, even by decades, and who are just,
Mm,
telling themselves, it'll never work. I don't think I can make it. I'm too old. I've got nothing to give.
mm,
Maybe they've been in, they've been out of work, for a while, and they want to go back, but it's hard to
yeah,
get integrated back to the workplace. I think that Aussie women from the start, and of course women in general across the
mm,
world, but have this wonderful opportunity. If only
yes,
they'll adopt a mindset. And I'm glad that you are adding this brick of encouragement, to the narrative that we can get started
yes.
anytime. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah,
And it's about persevering. because it will not open overnight. There are
Yes.
no overnight successes.
Yeah. Yeah. Silver bullets are, still
No,
mythical.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, we'll leave those for the Lone Ranger.
Yes. And since we're on the topic of entrepreneurship, entrepreneurship comes with risk. So that is a
Yes.
great segue to something I'd like to just ask you about, Bron. What is your view of risk taking for women? What would you like to encourage them, especially women who are working and
Mm.
who are perhaps they see a glass ceiling of sorts. How do you think they should deal with taking a risk to becoming more visible at work, or just taking stepping out of the comfort zone, so that they can make an impact, or thinking about perhaps going into a venture that they've never thought about, for example volunteering for a season, or even entrepreneurship.
Mm. I risk is real, and I don't want to downplay that because there can be financial risk.
Mm,
I took I didn't have a lot of superannuation, but that's how I
mm,
seed funded my business.
yeah,
And I've used some inheritance from my mum. So it comes with financial risk. And I've been in situations when that superannuation ran out and I wasn't making enough money from my business. I went on Centrelink benefits. I've had some lean patches during it, but I never gave up on what I felt I could do. So yeah, I don't want to downplay the risk. I don't want to
yeah,
downplay the
yeah,
financial risk. And I'm thankful that I never took out a loan. But for some businesses, you need to get a bank loan, and that will come with risk. So I don't want to downplay it. And I think for women too, there are risks that we face, particularly in the online space. And
yeah,
I was just reading something on LinkedIn this morning about um, just the risk, the extra work that women put in about grooming, about looking, particularly as we age, whereas men can just age quite naturally. Women still have this sort of persona that they have to keep up. They can't be too old, they can't be too young, they can't be too
right,
bold, they can't be too shy, you know, all of those sorts of things. So there are lots of risks. However, if you think you want to do something, I believe you can, because I see myself as just an ordinary person. If I look back at Bronwyn at age 6 or 8, she would be stunned to see what I have done and what I've worked through, and that all of the things that I've done. I didn't know my life would turn out this way. I see myself as quite an ordinary Australian woman. So, and I figure if I can do it, other people can do it. Yes, I have some skills, but there are others that I don't have that other people do. So we're always this mix of the things that we can do well and the things that we need to learn to do, or the things that we need other people to do for us. And
yeah,
I've got a VA who does a lot of my grunt work for me, and I'm so thankful for her. She's fantastic. But yeah, so yes, the risks are real, but
mm,
I would prefer to have taken those risks than die wondering. I will never
mm,
die wondering, could I have been a professional speaker? Because I tried. And I honestly believe that if you have a dream, give it a go. Give it a red hot go, not just for a
correct.
year or 18 months. Give it a red hot go, because it will take time. But I believe it's achievable.
That is absolutely wonderful, because I think that thinking the long game is important, and
Mm.
it's that's real encouragement to girls and women out there, who are thinking of who are dreaming, but maybe perhaps have
Yes, indeed.
self-censored themselves because of
Yes.
culture, or peer pressure or whatever.
Mm.
I think it's really wonderful, and I think it's really important to encourage women to step out, because as you say in your talks, women are the financial engines, in many cultures and many societies and many communities. Women are the gatekeepers of health, and women provide
Yes.
leadership, at all levels, from the family right up to, the highest levels. Maybe you can talk to us about this, leadership, and what message you like to share to girls and women, who that, they should dream big, and appreciate, and and also men as well who are listening in, the role of women in their communities.
Yes. Yeah, indeed. Indeed.
Yeah. So maybe we can start with, women as a, women being a core, financial engine, in many communities and societies, from microfinance, options. I mean, we've been hearing a lot about women, just, starting small businesses, and, providing employment, even, and income for their families and villages, and right up to the cities, here in Australia, where women, start businesses and that sort of thing, or lead, teams, and even boards.
Yes.
What would you like to share with regards to, your views on this, and to hammer home,
Mm.
the fact that it's not just the blokes, it's the ladies who are, really doing it, the, really flexing the muscles, and putting in the hours, and making it all happen.
Yeah. Look, I think all of what you've said is quite accurate. Even, back in my first marriage, where my husband was the main earner, because we had a fairly traditional marriage, and I was quite happy with that. However, I was the one who had to deal with the finances. I was the one who had the budget, paid the bills, made sure we had the food on the table. And there was a very lean time in that marriage where I just made sure the mortgage was paid and we had food on the table. And the utilities, I paid them off, the rates, I paid them off. So yeah, so women, even if they're not necessarily the main earners in a household, are often the ones who make sure that money gets well spent. And for many years I had erroneously believed that I wasn't a good money manager, because I couldn't see that my first husband and I were doing as well financially as my brother and his family and my sister and her family. But what I've come to realize is I'm actually an ace at managing money, because I could make a small amount go a long way. And I would really like to encourage any women who are on limited incomes and who are managing, like, something else I did. I said, mentioned that I was on Centrelink benefits. I managed a $30,000 debt for 2 years on Centrelink benefits, and I never defaulted. I managed how I used the money that I had, and always made sure I made the minimum payment, and then as I could, I paid that off. So I look back at that time, and it was scary. You're living on the edge, and yet I never, I never had to step off the cliff. And I really want to encourage women that even when we feel like we don't have much, the fact that we can utilize a small amount and make it do amazing things, that is a huge skill. And, certainly, I've been involved in the past with charitable work, or, being able to help women have like microfinancing in developing countries, because the understanding is that when women are funded, the whole
Yeah.
village benefits, the whole family benefits, because I think it's the sort of collective nature, the community nature that women have, that sense of collaboration that we see is important, so that we don't just want the money for ourselves, but we want to make sure our families, our friends are taken care of. But on the other hand, like at the moment, I'm working towards where at this point in life, I want to be safe in my
Yeah.
much older years. So I want to earn a
Yes.
lot of money now.
Yeah.
And it's taken me a long time to be able to say that quite honestly,
Mm.
because I haven't always had a lot of money. And now
Sure.
I have the potential to do that. And women need to have the confidence that they deserve to have a lot of money, that they can earn a lot of money. Yes, we've still got the gender pay gap. We've still got, concerns in those areas. Still have, women being passed over promotion, all sorts of
Yeah.
barriers.
Mm.
But women are capable of earning good money. Women deserve to earn more good money, and women should not be
Mm.
afraid of earning good money.
Mhm. Mhm. And with that, I think about employers, who are
Mm.
either A, using AI to filter through um, resumes and all that, and I think that AI has got like maybe some implicit biases, uh, you know,
Yes.
against women, against female parents,
Mm.
and against female caretakers, multi-generational caretaking. And
Yes.
also, even when it comes to the face-to-face interview, I wonder if employers, hiring managers, especially the younger ones, need to hear the message that generally women have a lot more, that they are able to bring to the table. Like you just mentioned, about financial management, that is such an important skill. You can't teach this at work. You can't send them for a course, or and then suddenly they become, it you have to learn it from the ground up. You have to probably have gone through the tough times, the lean times, like you said,
Mm.
and really, have that as part of their nature, and character. And also, secondly, that hiring managers, should really be aware of this challenge with ageism, because it's not necessarily
Yes.
that young people, bring more to the table. In fact, I think that silver warriors, have so much to offer.
Mm.
And
Yes.
on the other side, the candidates also, the confidence seems to be low, because they see around them, all these young people um, potentially getting jobs, and the discouragement, that the society and cultural influences seem to blare at us, that or maybe your time
Yeah.
has passed. I note in certain societies, even, that if you're past the age of 35, you're already considered like starting to go downhill. So,
Mm.
what word of encouragement could you give to these two groups of people? That number one, to the hiring managers, please do reconsider. The what women bring to the table, and more mature and senior people, as well as the candidates. What word of encouragement can you share with them?
Mm. Yeah, I think, you talked earlier about awareness. I think that's the first step for those who are on the hiring side of things.
Mm.
Be aware of the potential for ageism, and particularly for ageism on the older end, because I think ageism affects younger people as well, that they can be dismissed thinking that they have nothing to bring to the table because they've
Yeah.
not lived more than 25 years. That's not their fault, but they do bring insight from their age group, which I don't have because I grew up in a completely different time. My
Sure.
eldest granddaughter will be 21. So, those people are in my grandchildren's age group. They live in a different world. They grow up in a different world and have a different outlook. But I think too, particularly on the other end of the age scale, and I certainly read a lot about this, that, and particularly for women, once you get past 40, maybe 50, you are being cons- considered for retirement. You're the one first handed out a redundancy. Um, and what hiring people need to understand, recruiters need to understand, is that yes, you'll probably have to pay an older person more than you'd pay a 25-year-old. However, what you are paying for cannot be quantified, because you are not only paying for the probably multiple qualifications that these people have, because most people who progress in any sort of career have not just have the original qualifications, they've continued with their professional development. So you've got all of that, those years of growth as a professional, and then you add on top of that the years of experience of real world, face to face, cold face, whatever cliche you want to use. But that's the reality, and you are doing your workplace a disservice. You're doing your business a disservice,
Mm.
um, by just glossing over someone who looks like me.
Yeah.
On the other side
Yeah.
of things,
Mm.
one of the things I discovered is once I hit 45, I started to like myself. And I think it's that sense of where you start to go, I'm too old for this crap. I'm just going to get on and live life. And certainly by the time you get to my age, it's like, if you don't like me, I don't care. Because I really like myself, and you're happy in your skin. And so I would encourage older people to just have confidence in who they are, because who you are is enough. It's more than enough to face just about anything, because I know what I've faced. And I know there are other people who've faced heaps more than me, and have come out the other end, if not always smiling, but can look back and go, look what I've done. So you have confidence in who you are, because there is
Mm.
no one. I know this is going to sound like a cliche, but there
Mm.
literally is no one else on the planet like you,
Mm.
who has seen through your eyes, who has the wisdom that you've gained over the years, plus all the experience and the qualifications. So
Mm.
yeah, look, it's been a hard lesson for me, particularly as
Sure.
a woman stepping into, a business on my own. And I'm
Mm.
still learning this, learning to ask in terms of charging what I know I'm worth, because women particularly can downplay our worth and our value, but,
Yeah.
learn to ask for what you're worth.
That is wonderful. I love that part about starting with liking yourself. I think that
Mm,
that is just absolutely powerful because, well, I mean, how can you market yourself if, you don't like yourself in the first place,
yeah.
whether it be in
Mm,
the workplace or, at, in the marketplace. But
mm,
I think that liking of ourselves did not come, by accident or overnight. I think that there was a lot of effort put in, and I like
yes.
to maybe spend just a few more minutes on the role of effort in pushing the boat out to sea. Because I
Yeah.
think that a lot of people hold themselves back with the very first effort, be it the first YouTube clip or the first sales pitch or the first
Mm,
attempt at networking at a corporate party, to
mm,
rock up to the top cat and just say good day, how's it going. So
yeah.
it takes an immense amount of courage, and I think that sometimes we let our demons come and tell us that
Yes.
no, it can't be done and all that. So with me already winding the spring on you, so I'd like you to let you just share with us something
Mm.
about what I just said. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, there's quite a few things in there that I'd like to speak to. Um, First of all, if and I can't remember who said it. Some famous person who said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration, and that's so true. you can be inspired and you can have, some of us have more gifts in some areas than others, but those gifts are there for us to use. And that's one of the reasons why I'm doing my PhD, is because I can. And I think it would be a waste of my intelligence and my ability to think if I didn't do this. So, um, yeah, I see that there's a sense in which we have a responsibility to use the gifts that we've been given, because nobody is gifted in the exact ways that we are. Yes, there are lots of other people doing PhDs, but nobody sees the world through my eyes, and so I bring a particular lens to the work that I'm doing. So do it because you can. There's often that when people ask why do people climb mountains, and they say because it's there. There's so much truth in that. I'm climbing the mountain of a PhD because it's there and I know I can do it. So I'd say that do it, just do it. Nike. But I think too, you talked about demons.
Yes.
One of the things that I was taught by my fantastic speaker business coach, Jacqueline Brooker, she talked about clarity by comparison. And that's where you, on one side of the ledger, you write down all those thoughts that the inner critic brings. And then on the right hand side, you write down a positive alternative and cross out the negative. And I'll give you an example. Certainly, starting a business at age 60, I had the I'm too old to be doing this mantra playing in my head. And when I crossed that out and wrote, I'm just the right age to be doing this, and was able to look back with that sort of clarity, I realized that yes, I actually literally could not have been doing this business before now because I was dealing with other things, whether it was, raising a family, going through a marriage breakup, trying to find myself
Yeah.
again, all of those things.
Yeah.
So you can silence the inner critic by choosing to turn their words into a mantra that is useful for you. That said, the inner critic, and I call mine the examiner because he examines me and finds me wanting. What I did each time some of those words would come up, I would literally say this to myself: thank you for your input, but I do not agree with your opinion. And I don't know how long I did that for, but now that inner critic rarely comes, because what those two sentences did was, first of all, honor what your critic was saying, because the reality is, I think our inner critic often is just trying to keep us safe.
Mm.
My inner critic was saying, Bron, you actually aren't you a bit old? And gosh, I tell you what, there are times when I feel it. I feel every one of my 69 years and go, oh, what am I doing? So there's some truth in what our inner critic brings. But if we can honour that as somebody, a critic who's trying to actually keep us safe, so we notice it, but then just say, look, I don't agree with that and I'm going to go on this path. The second thing I want to say about that inner critic is that we hear the term imposter syndrome bandied around, and I actually don't believe that exists. What does exist is doubt and self doubt. When we start something new, we've taken on a new role at work, we've got a promotion, we're dealing with a new team, we've stepped into a new business, doesn't matter what it is, there will always be doubt. Can I do this? Do I have what it takes? The reality is that you do. You just don't know it yet. And it's perfectly okay to have doubts about your
Yeah.
ability. Now, if you have applied for a new role, sat the interview, got the job, other people know that you can do it. You just don't know it yet. So the next time you feel like you're an imposter, the reality is you're not. You are in the right place. Yes, there will be people around you who have so much more experience because they've been in that spot longer than you have, and that's the only reason. So, they're the things that I would say. Honour your inner critic in a sense. They are trying to keep you safe, but you don't have to agree with them. And just remember that self-doubt is perfectly natural.
There are days, Bron, when the we really feel like the inner critic has wrestled us to the ground,
Yes.
and it's such a constant fight, I'd say, for lack of a better phrase,
Mm.
to still those voices of doubt and just forge ahead. And
Yeah.
even, not just our inner critic, but also external critics as well. So,
Mm.
would you like to share maybe one a tool that you have to encourage yourself, to keep going when those dark days come?
Mm. I what I do is I actually allow myself to feel those dark days. Don't try to push them away. And like we can't always live on the mountaintop. There are valleys, and they're perfectly normal, and they're a normal part of life. And well, I'm sure we've all seen those memes that we think when we start a business, it's just this going to be one straight line, and what it really looks like is a tangled wall of wool as
Sure.
we go through things. So there are going to be days when we will mess up, when we don't know what we're doing, that we'll have disappointments, where we'll make decisions that when we look back and go, oh, I think I should have done something different there.
Mm,
But allow yourself the space and the grace to grieve, to feel lousy, you know, but feel it for a day and then decide to get up again. Don't allow it to linger. And I think what I've discovered with the more difficult emotions, and I'm not going to say they're bad or negative, because all emotions, I don't think emotions have any sort of moral value. There's no good emotions and bad emotions, but some are more difficult to handle.
yeah.
Anger, grief, sadness, frustration, disappointment in ourselves, but feel them, allow them to come. And what I've discovered is if we allow them to come and we honour them, they actually go of their own accord and quite quickly. Whereas if we try to deny that they're there, that we don't feel disappointed or we don't feel frustrated or we don't feel angry or we're not really sad about this, all we're doing is we're pushing that down and it stays there somewhere in the pit of our stomach and then bubbles up often at a most inappropriate time. So give yourself grace to feel the downs days and then get up again because, like the song says, tomorrow, tomorrow, I love you tomorrow, you're only a day away. But that's the reality of life. I think maybe that's why that song gets sung so much because it does sum up our lives. There is always, well, hopefully tomorrow.
I really appreciate what you just said because I think that sort of approach to bottling up feelings and suppressing emotions, I think it dates back, all the way to childhood. And,
Mm,
I think that, many adults still carry with them the
yeah,
challenge of, the scars of childhood. And I like it that you give, you are, essentially saying, give permission to yourself, to
yes.
just go easy on yourself and not have to
Yeah,
beat up yourself all the time, which I
that's
think
right.
is really important. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, because we are our own harshest critic. No one is as harsh towards ourselves as we are. So we need to learn to be kind to ourselves.
absolutely. Bron, I could go on for hours, but I'm going to respect your time, and I'm going to have to bottle this up for this episode. And it's just wonderful. I really am very grateful because you have left with our readers, our listeners, some very important tools to handle, challenges, and all the way from you know um, just putting in effort, all the way to giving ourselves a break, when the tough
Mm,
days come. And I
yeah,
really appreciate that. That's what leadership is all about. And
mm,
I think that once we get it right, we can serve very effectively as models, for
yes,
the people under us, for your audiences, and both in person and the television audiences and the web audiences, but also to you, dear viewer, who are just soaking this in. It's a great a reminder, that we don't have to be hard on ourselves, but
yeah,
but we do need to put in the work, and it's not going to be easy, But if we think the long game, we're going to reap the harvest at the end. So,
Yes.
Bron Williams, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. It's beautiful. I would love to have you back on the show, and it's great. I really appreciate. There's still so much, that you can share, and which I can pick your brains from. But uh, ladies and
Yeah.
gentlemen, Bron Williams, thank you very much.
Thank you. It's been great.